It's just them, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Just like that, we're always right now, this lovely evening, so. Should we just start? Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, all right. Well, thank you all so much for being willing to take a chunk of your afternoon on a day that's not your regular meeting day. We appreciate you calling this special meeting. I know that at your last meeting, Jen Root, one of my fellow board members, mentioned that there was a grant opportunity available to the library district that we were thinking about. So I know there was mention of it, but not a whole lot more detail about what that might involve. And we are actually thinking about, we're hoping to get your thoughts, I guess. We're thinking about the Coulters Creek building as a potential site for the new library. It would represent more square footage of space on the inside, as well as having outside space, which right now the library doesn't have. Chris and I just took a moment since we got down here a little bit early, and we're walking around and looking at that sort of lowered patio space on the side, and just what a wonderful space that would be potentially for story times, as well as that sort of green space over there, the space in the back that's got some container gardens, which would be a really great teaching tool for kids. We know it's been a while since I've been in the Coulters Creek building, because I didn't come down to look at it beforehand, but that wonderful sun porch that's on the side, which also would be a really great storytime space for more inclement weather. And as well as even the basic plan of the building having more square footage than our current, because our current library, I mean, it works so hard, but it's so small, and there's so many things that just can't happen, you know, in that space. And so we would love for the community to have a little bit more space, a little bit of room to stretch, more space for books, more space for other things. I know Chris, we have a little sort of potential plan of what it could look like in there. Right now there's a commercial kitchen in that space, of course it's part of it since it was a restaurant, and we would be thinking about maybe getting some of that out of there so we could maximize that space, hopefully be able to sell some of that equipment to recoup some of the costs on that, and then so that whole space could be library space. Again, there's that. Sorry. Oh, we can, okay. I'll look at this, not good directions, but this is a really simple plan that just our architect just kind of was just sort of what might be possible in that space. So we've got a couple of everything. So of course, if you're looking at it this way, I'm not very good with cardinal directions, right? But I know this is the street here at the top. Other people might be better at cardinal directions than me. And so we'd be looking at some space in the front near the windows for seating, space for books, space for studying. There's that little space here that's sort of in the middle that could potentially be a kind of a private small meeting space. If someone had, for example, a Zoom interview that they needed to do if they were applying for a job, or if someone was interested in telehealth and needed a private place to be able to speak with someone, with a medical professional, that would be a space people could use for that, as well as some other group study space. Bathrooms that we could make ADA compliant, which is really important. The current bathroom in the current library, of course, is not, and I think it was a really difficult space for somebody with mobility issues to use. I mean, apart from the fact that getting into the library in the first place is, I think, difficult for someone with mobility issues. That ramp is not ADA compliant, and then there's a step to get into the library, so I think it does present some barriers to anyone who's trying to get in. The new building, the other building has already dealt with a lot of those issues as they were getting themselves set up. So in a lot of ways, it's a really great space. We know it's a sturdy building. It's got great flooring. It's got a lot of really wonderful potential. And so when we saw that it was on the market, we thought, well, maybe, you know, we would love to make that space available for all of our community in Juliaetta. And we know the folks in Kendrick who also use the Juliaetta Library. So that's one of the things. That's what we're thinking about. This building, of course, also has that downstairs space that right now is sort of closed off, and we're thinking that would be perhaps a second phase of the library doing some work on that, but that would be a wonderful community meeting space, for example, which I know most towns need more of. There aren't a lot of community meeting spaces, and especially free community meeting spaces. I know we've had this conversation in Troy as well, like the library is the only place in town where you can book a room and use it for free. I mean, there's other places that you can use their rooms, but they're not free, and fair enough, but it's one of the things that's a really nice service that libraries like to be able to provide. If we were to get this building, we would need to do some structural work on it to kind of make sure that we can support the rate of books, for example. Of course, it's zone, it'll code it a little bit differently for restaurant use versus for the weight of books and shelves and that kind of thing, but I think we've been, we on the board and Chris have been talking for years about being able to give Juliaetta a better library, and being able to make sure that, of course, our branches are benefiting from all the work, that they're always in our thoughts and we're always working to make life better out here as well. And so this just seems like a really unique opportunity. It's again, a building that's in great shape. We would have to do a fair bit of work on it, but not sort of fundamental structural work, which is a whole other level of commitment. So that is our thought. I feel like I'm very talkative, so I could say like 15 more things, but I don't want to chat at you all afternoon. But although I do have more things I guess I could say. But I guess I should ask if there are any questions just starting off.
I love the idea. I think it's got a lot of light, and I like the only thing I don't like, for me, the downfall is across the street from the
Yes,
park.
we were just talking about that.
And there's really not a lot of safe parking as far as like being on the main street. I worry about all the kids getting out to where here they can park on the side street, even though it's hard when people turn. Those would be my fears, or maybe people could, maybe park in the back and come upstairs
we were
or something
thinking
like
about
that.
that. There was that gravel area in the back kind of near that we were just discussing. That would be a great place to convert to parking, and maybe also a little bit of that green space on the sides. People aren't having to park across the street and go across.
Right.
So certainly we would kind of keep that uppermost in our mind. And if we did use that space as parking, that's kind of almost as much parking as the Moscow Library.
As far as like downfalls, that just being
Yeah.
across from the bar, that would probably be my only thing because of all the traffic and people stopping in and out and just different things.
That's
So
really
the
true.
main thing is crossing the street, kids crossing the streets, the school kids.
Absolutely,
Because they
absolutely.
bring all the kids down
Mhm.
to go to the library.
Right. Yeah, no, that's,
That is but I guess if you have a teacher and an aide,
right. And
you
that was,
have one in front and one in back, and
Well, and I might be able to, with the library over there, we might be able to push IDT harder to get our speed limit drops to 25. Because that's one of our goals.
oh, right, okay. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so maybe we can use that as a harder pushing point with IDT to get our speed limit
That's a
dropped.
great idea. No, I love that idea. And even to talk about maybe doing making some sort of pedestrian crossing so you could have like a light or something at that point, just so people have some indication, because I completely agree. That was our one thing,
Yeah.
we're like, if only we could just, if only it were on the other side of the street, then it would be much more of a no-brainer, but it is nice that it's sort of near the trail. I think that's a nice thing if kids are gonna do a nature walk or do some, or adults, not just kids, I'm gonna just focus on kids, but, or if there's, patrons in general, yes, or if there's, again, that garden space in the back, if it's a really great opportunity to sort of talk about wildlife, to talk about native plants, there are all kinds of really neat educational opportunities that, and especially being on that side, that would lead nicely to people being able to take a little trail walk and then come to the library. So there's that part of it too, but I completely agree. I want to make sure that whatever we do, we have safety foremost in all of our minds, because we want that to be.
I mean, it's, the parking itself, it's no different than when people park out here on the main street
Yeah,
too.
we don't have much parking.
Yeah, because, they do park here and walk around, so that can be a wash, I guess, in itself, but
Right, right.
just have to be careful.
So what is it that you need from us?
Well, here's the, okay, so so what we're actually applying for a grant from the Idaho Commission for Libraries to fund some of this. They have a lot of grant funding available right now, and if you want to say more
Well, I
about
was gonna say, normally, construction kind of grants are non-existent for libraries, and we can't spend tax money to buy real estate or to build new buildings. We can only use it to remodel. So this grant would require the library to own the building for 5 years. And then we might enter into discussion at that point, or have a joint powers agreement or something with the city and talk about whether we want to, transfer it to the city or something. But at this point, we would have to own it for 5 years. The maximum is $500,000. We're applying for the maximum. We don't know what our chances are. Other libraries are applying for this, but this is a very unique opportunity for us to do it, because the grant includes certain things. It's kind of related to the pandemic kind of crises, things that were happening. So we have to demonstrate certain things, like we have to show health monitoring ability, telehealth, or other kinds of health monitoring things, workforce development, and education. Of course, education we do anyway, but the other two things, we're working on building those into the grant, and we need more space to be able to do that. We couldn't do those things at this library.
Oh, right, yeah, for sure.
Right, and that's one, yeah, the nice things about that space, the potential space where you could have some privacy, because so many of our branch libraries, they're one room, you just, if you wanna have a private discussion about your work, if you wanna have a private conversation about your health, you're kind of out of luck. I mean, even if the library's empty, the branch manager has to be right there, and so that's a really, really important thing that I would love to see us have more of.
And as, you know, Nick and Wendy and Dick, and Wendy, I can't remember, I know I've been to meetings where you've been here, but I don't remember how long you've been, when I would come down for the CLP meetings.
I've been
library
here.
project meetings.
Well, were you at the CLP? You did one or two, right?
Something, yeah. I've been here like 6 years, 7
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. But that, you know, how many times have we hit brick walls?
Yes, yes.
You know, trying to find spaces, and we're always looking for this side of on
Yeah.
the road. And that was my first thought, was that side of the road, it's too bad. But on the other hand, like, where else? So
You know, the perfect location, I know this sounds really crazy, is the post office. That has a great parking lot, if you could find something like that, and ironically, it's going on sale tomorrow.
Really? Okay.
But that's what you need. So talk the post office into buying Coulter's Creek, and you guys find that post office. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Is that big
Post
enough?
office isn't big enough,
Yeah, it's
though.
not big enough.
What's this perfect?
I'm kidding, you can't
No,
have
I
a
know.
post office.
Is this-
But that's
I was
what
like,
you need, that's
tell
what
me
you
more.
need is a parking lot like that, that would be
Right,
phenomenal.
no, that's true, yeah.
Right.
Again, we would love that, and like Moscow would love to have a parking lot in our,
But there isn't anything here in Juliaetta, and,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's,
Yeah.
That's, well, I mean, we looked at the farm, Granny's Pantry many times, and with the amount of money that it would cost,
Yeah.
where Coulter's Creek is already
right, there's a lot,
3/4 of the way done,
Right,
basically.
absolutely.
Right.
yeah.
The bar is for sale. Not that I wanna see Golders Creek Library, but the bar is for sale. But I would rather want to see it.
I think Coulter's Creek would be better.
Yeah, more light, yeah, light was the first
I
thing you
love the
mentioned.
light, I love the architecture within it,
Yeah,
I think
I know
that's
the
really
ceilings are
catchy.
beautiful, I feel like it's just a space that feels like
It's open, airy,
your
Well, the
community loves
history
you.
of the building.
That is pretty, yeah.
Yeah.
I love
And-
that it's a library.
Yeah,
Well, I'm up there, that building has been remodeled. I mean, they put pipes, rods through there and pulled that building together. I watched them do it.
Yeah.
So, I've done a little bit of building. Where you're sitting here, I built this. So I know a little
Right.
about building, and to me, they done a very good job. And where the other old buildings, they need a lot of work. And when you start working on an old building, it is not square, it is not level, it is a lot of work to level and to square it up, and if you don't do that kind of work, you don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I know what you mean. That's
So-
what my mother always says, and there are always a lot of surprises too, you know, you think,
I know.
oh, it's gonna be this, and then you're like, oh, but there's actually dry rot, or oh, there's a
Right.
crack, it turns
Yeah.
out there's a crack in the foundation of the back, I mean, it's just never, so yeah, so that's another reason this is.
I do like that there's parking in the back, though, that does make it for like moms that
Well,
have
yes,
little
yeah,
kids.
exactly, yeah, if you wanna
An
get your
outdoor
short
area.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I guess back to my original question.
What do you,
Do you have any questions?
No, no.
Okay, so mainly, so we're applying for this grant, which would cover the vast majority of the cost. The library, certainly, we've been trying to do a good job of husbanding our resources so that we can add to that pot if we need to, so that's all great. And the main thing we wanted from this meeting is, one, to just make sure that you're informed, because nothing makes people unhappier than finding out like 6 months from now that a thing happened and we didn't tell you, and I would feel really disrespected if that were me, so we wanted to know that. And also, we would love if you felt like you were comfortable providing us with a letter of support as we submit the grant. The grant is due June 12th, which is part of why we couldn't wait for your next meeting, and why we asked for a special meeting, because I know you meet the 13th. But we would love it if you just wrote even a short letter, like the City Council and the Mayor of Juliaetta are, we've discussed this, we think this would be a good thing for our community, we like the location, we like the idea. That would really strengthen our grant, and I think just put us stronger position to get the maximum amount from them. So that's the main thing we would love if you felt comfortable providing that to us.
Quick question. So do you generally prefer that a city own their library, or is it a big deal if you guys kept ownership of it? Like after 5 years or so?
Yeah. Most of our libraries are owned by the city. Most of the Latah County libraries are owned by the city. Potlatch, but you could probably not say
Right,
more.
well, Potlatch was built with a similar, I guess, maybe kind of grant back about 23 years ago, 24 years ago, and it required that the library owned it for 20 years, and then the plan was already to turn it over to the city, and the city had agreed to it. We haven't actually made that happen yet, but the city's agreed to it. And I think it's just been a budgetary issue, because our budget, we run 7 libraries, Moscow, and 6 rural branches, and so it's just been a matter of what can our budget accommodate in the cities in exchange for us providing, the staffing and the infrastructure, the internet, the computers, the materials that circulate, access to all the other stuff that you can get online, everything that we pay for. We asked the cities, I guess, to, provide their facilities. And then, we pay a token amount of $1 a year, including Moscow. Moscow, the city owns it. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's kind of been our model.
So if you guys submit it on the 12th, how long before get our results back or answers back?
When did they actually
I think
tell us?
July 28th was when
Oh,
they
right,
would
that's right.
notify us, yeah, and then they would begin dispersing money in August.
Right, so like that's late August, so we would talk about that with the seller. But yes, to answer your question, we have a couple of different models that happen in the county right now, and that's not something that we need to firm up in this moment.
Yeah.
Because again,
Yeah,
of many of our, like Genesee, Bodle, Deary, the cities all own those properties, and we just rent from them. But again, Potlatch, we own, and so we're doing more than one thing. And so we can see what's best for the library district and for the city in the long run, or even in the medium run. But so that's just so for right now, it's probably simplest. I mean, if you guys want to if you want to buy the building, we will happily sit back and let you do that. But we're hoping that. Again, it's so amazing to have an opportunity to get this much funding and to be able to put it towards a building, because Chris is absolutely right. Like, it's pretty rare to see that be possible, and I wish there were lots more funding for libraries at every level, at state and federal level, and all these things. So the fact that this is possible, we just want to jump on it. And I mean, the worst that can happen is that they say no, and if they say no, we'll talk more. But
because the other what we had been thinking we would have to do is, if we wanted to make this happen before this grant came up, was run a plant facilities levy in the county, which schools do all the time. But this would be nice to be able to just get it taken care of, or mostly taken care of. I mean, there'd be a lot of money we'd have to sink into the conversion, but still, it would be the major chunk of it. And like I said, normally we do not have access to enough, to any money to be able to buy things. So I think school districts can, but we can't.
Have you guys talked to the owners, and do you have an idea of the price tag? Or
Oh,
you're just
yeah.
going off what it's listed, or?
We've made an offer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we will see if they like that.
Yeah.
We're hoping that they do.
And the other thing, I guess we would like to have access to is that $22,000 to help us put toward that building at some point, yeah. Either toward the cost of purchase, or,
Or towards the structural work that we would do subsequently, whatever.
That's
the most
that's
sense.
why we were asking you to hold off on, so we can put it toward that.
Just-
If it happens, we don't know if we'll get it.
But there's options beyond this, you were saying, like potentially levying, or there's other ways to potentially.
There are other ways. I mean, I feel like it's always hard to tell how the county's gonna feel about a levy.
Sure.
That's one of those things, and sometimes people are super excited about spending money on things that are for the general public, that it's not people are not as excited about
Sure.
that. So if we would love to just not have to,
Go down that road.
go down that
Well,
road if possible.
And I think we'd explore other grant opportunities. There are other foundations, other organizations that we could get some money for. We did that for Moscow, got some money that way, so, to help with the remodel part of it.
Right, so this is sort of the
I
big
love it.
hurdle.
I think it's a great idea.
I love it.
I'm so glad to
Can't
hear
imagine anything I'd rather see happen with that building, to be honest with you.
Right, I mean,
I think it-
And of all
Yeah.
our libraries, the Juliaetta Library right now is the one that is most in need
Yeah,
of well, just being new, being different. It's a, you know, it just doesn't work for us. Deary Library is pretty small, but it's in pretty good condition. I'd love to see that one expanded too, but this library just really needs some help, and I think you all agree, because the city hasn't been interested in, you know, remodeling that. You don't feel like it's worth it. So,
And I have to say, Julie, I mean, I don't play favorites among the branches, but y'all have one, it's like such an enthusiastic, library positive, library focused community that is really, and we would, I mean, I think of all the branches, you're the ones who bring people come out for the library, they express their love and appreciation for the library and the service we provide them. Like, I want y'all to have the crown jewel
Sure.
of the libraries if we can do that. So if this can get us closer to that, we would love to see it happen. So anyway, I'm happy to have more questions.
No, I was just gonna say though, down the line, I'd like to learn more about your workforce training aspect, because I think that would revolutionize our community, honestly.
Yeah, and if we get, there's so many opportunities, I mean, and so many conversations with libraries at the, you know, like all over the country about that, about how to provide more workforce training services, about how to make those things possible. And I think once we have a space that accommodates that, we can do a ton of programming to do that. We can bring people in to do programming and training. We can make sure that our Wi-Fi capabilities make it possible for people to have like really good, I mean, there's all kinds of things we can do with this, but right now we kind of are a little bit hampered by, again, just the lack of privacy in that building. So there are a couple of significant issues with that, but we would love to make more of that happen. So, and I think you're absolutely right. And we'd love to hear your thoughts about that too. I mean, that's the other thing, is like an opportunity for you and for the rest of the community to chime in on what you'd like to see happen in the library. I mean, we could have some really interesting conversations about things like that. Like, what we want to see. Do we want more young adult programming? Do we want more, like some, you know, a little bit of space carved out to do one thing or another, and we can sort of dream and plan around those things. I mean, this is a very, very bare bones thing, but we can kind of fill that in with some of the things that might go in specific places, or things that we might want to specifically try, or we want to dedicate the sun porch to. There's all kinds of
The library lady, she has to make a lot of these decisions, because she's the one that's there all the time, and if you don't.
Well, I think we need to get the building first, before she gets to make the decisions, right?
Make a movie
Yeah,
for something.
but-
Where were you moving?
Yes.
You know, how many of you worked on that library over here?
I know, but we're
I've been
trying,
Smokey the Bear in there once.
Nobody
Have you ever been
but
Smokey the
me.
Bear?
Go ahead.
I moved,
Redone the
Must have pictures of that
bathrooms and all
somewhere.
of that.
I moved to write a letter of support for the library,
I'll second.
and we can
All
get
in
it.
favor?
Hopefully we get it, I think it'll be a nice building.
I just
Yeah.
love
I
how
think
rich
it'd
it
be- I
feels
think it would
and
be
homey
great.
and
Yeah.
warm,
Then we
you
can have
know.
some
Yeah.
parking
And I
over here
think
for
having
us.
chairs up by those windows, it's just
Well,
gonna feel
yeah.
so amazing.
I love that it wouldn't feel like an afterthought, or like
Right.
we kind of did the best we
Right.
could with the space we had. It would feel like, ta-da! Here's your beautiful space. Come and enjoy it. Like I think that's
I
just
think
such a
it'd be
great way to
great.
feel.
And like a little infant center or toddler center, you know, and
Exactly.
all the little books and the little shelves and, oh,
Story
yes.
time in the spring
Yes.
outside on that
Yep.
patio
Yes.
down below where the little park
And
was.
if the rain threatens, you just jump into the sun porch and you've got a really
Yeah.
wonderful space there too, and people can still have the quiet space inside, and then there's space where people get a little rambunctious
Right.
without disturbing people. There's so many great things about it. So thank you so much. You're already moved and seconded enjoyment, so I don't want to keep you forever, but
Can I just go back to the workforce thing? We've been talking to Doug, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Crothers, who is in the workforce training program at LCSC.
I used to be an instructor.
I took one of his
okay.
classes, he's really good.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he's very excited. He wrote us a letter of support. And we talked to him about, you know, could people in that department come up here? Or, you know, we'd have classes we could do, you know, we have a meeting out to conduct Zoom meetings with a TV, all kinds of things. So there are things that he sees big possibilities there, even if they're just virtual kinds of things. But I think we're close enough too that we could have people come in. So that would be a big thing. And he's actually interested in doing all of our branches too.
Oh,
Things
awesome.
are all of our branches, but this would be the first place we would do anything that formal. So
Idaho loves to write checks for workforce training, the state does
there you
too.
go.
Tons and tons.
Yeah.
Actually,
Libraries do
the
work for free.
possibilities for that building are endless
Endless.
for that library. I just, yeah, it's Crazy.
You got my hopes way high, I'm sure I'm not the only one.
I know, so we will do our best to optimize.
So will you have to put an elevator in that building then, when you do phase 2?
We wouldn't have to, I know we talked about this, right?
That was a major thing.
Yeah, it's called the Cottonwood one.
Yeah, and I asked the architect about that early on, Castello, he's the one that did those drawings that Brett from Castello. He said that he couldn't give me a firm figure, but he said they're close to, at least 100,000, closer to maybe 300,000. I could not believe it. But if we kept that lower level, at least for the time being, as, an event space that could be separately accessible, have a, you could reserve it, you wouldn't need anybody from the library to open it up for you, because we have that at Potlatch, and Troy, you can borrow the key and, go in. So that could be, we could have a ramp out there, parking, ADA accessibility, people could just go in there and use that space, and we might have some library storage or something down there. But that, we could have that, and we wouldn't have to worry about then, having an elevator, because it wouldn't be a public space. And remember, we talked about this before, because of staffing, our staffing is very minimal.
Right.
We could really have, it wouldn't be
2 levels.
Yeah, but it could still be used as a nice space.
Right.
Well, she needs space to put, so, I go over there and work quite often, and I remodeled that whole bathroom and put everything in it new, and
And you put the you brought cabinets over.
yeah, I put all that
Yeah.
in, and it just, I guess that's only important. And I wanted to, thinking about building onto the back of it, but just put it up, so, yeah.
So that's exciting.
Because that bathroom, when you gotta lock the door and back around and in there, you don't turn around in that bathroom, you go that direction. And so,
Absolutely.
you
Right, so if
I
we're
know
struggling,
probably most people ain't used it, but I've been there many a times, and it's a nice building, old building, and when we painted it, the building, the outside of the building is not, the lumber is over 100 years old, and it's wearing out. If it wasn't for the paint job we done on it and filled the cracks with caulking, why it'd fall down.
I move to adjourn. We can still talk,
Oh, no,
but,
yeah, no,
yeah, we
no,
can just
yes,
end the
no,
regular
it's-
meeting.
I'll second.